Hi, so you are watching this video because you want to get an introduction to offensive hacking or ethical offensive hacking or just offensiveness to IT systems. So how are we going to do that? Now, first of all, I think it's very important that we talk about what is offensive itself. What does that word mean? So, being directly offensive usually applies to getting a certain amount of traffic towards a system or harming that system in a way. Having a malicious intent is also offensive. Now, is it offensive to use Google or do reconnaissance? No, I wouldn't say that is offensive. Now, what you want to learn is offensiveness, right? So stuff like brute forcing and DDoS attacks, how to get actual access, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, command injection, server-side forgery, so on, all these different kind of things that you can do in order to do actual hacking. So I want to be clear that there are some steps before you can be offensive, okay? If you want to learn more about all the other kind of things there are in hacking, apart from, just doing DDoS or just doing SQL injection, you need to, invest some time there. Like every other topic in the world, you need to invest some time to get good at it. So, before you do that, I want to make it clear to you that I do not think it is a good idea to go ahead and be offensive to any IT system. I do not think hacking is a good idea at all. If you are hired to do it and you have a contract and you are a penetration tester, an offensive one, right? Then it's all right. But all these kind of illegal things going on, this is not what I want to teach, that's not what I want to say, but the things you learn, the tools you learn are the same. So let's start talking about, we have something like a DDoS, we have SQL injection, cross-site request forgery, let's pick some of those. Also command injection. Now, there are different kind of tools in order to do that. The DDoS one can be done, for example, with the hping 3 command, and the hping 3 command is basically a command that can be used to send a lot of traffic, and you can do different kind of things like SYN flag or SYN flag or rest or push, ACK or urge. Different kind of flags you can push ahead. Now, in order to understand what these kind of things are, you need to understand the TCP protocol, and also understand the TCP protocol, you need to do some research. So one more time, just pressing a button, automate your attack, and being offensive, well, it's kind of easy enough. But do you understand what you're actually doing? And will you apply the correct tool set in the correct situation? I don't know. But that's probably why you are watching this video, because I will tell you how to get there in a certain way. Now, I cannot explain everything in a video, right? So I'm not going to go ahead and explain every single thing in the TCP connection, TCP protocol. But what I can do is pull up Paint, and I can talk about the TCP protocol in some degree. And let's just start talking about that the TCP protocol, TCP, right? When you initiate a connection, right? So let's write that. So connection initiation. I need to make this a bit bigger so you can see it, because it is not that big. When you do that, a three-way handshake, that is the short of it, is conducted. There are 3 steps. The first step, the second step, and the third step. The very first thing that happens is that the client, the server, and the client, right? The client want to initiate a connection. So, all these kind of things, why are we talking about this? So, well, the thing is, when you initiate a connection, you send a packet with the SYN flag set. Okay, let's go back in. You can do an SYN flag on the hping3 command. So there is something to it. Now, what does it really mean for you? It really means that when you set a SYN flag, the server will reply back SYN, ACK, and eventually the client will just basically write back SYN, and then a connection is established. Then you can start transferring packets back and forth, and things are done. That is how the TCP initial three-way handshake works. So you want to say, but how can we be offensive to that? All right, so okay, I'm going to explain that to you. These 3 steps, let me make that highlight to you. So this is step 1, this is step 2, and this is step number 3. Depending on what you want to do, you can misuse these steps. How can you do that? Well, think about this way. How is it that a computer works? How is it when you do actual programming? And now this is going to become a bit technical now, because there is no other way for me to explain to you and the other through programming, because programming is essentially the way a computer works, the way it communicates, and basically the way you need to understand in order to understand this. In programming, it's done by creating something called a socket. Now let me write that, because the word itself might not mean a lot to you, but a socket is basically just called a network connection. And whenever you create a network connection on a computer, I want to ask you a question right now. You should probably think the answer pretty quick, because I'm going to tell it pretty quick. What is reserved on the computer in order for a computer to remember a network connection? If you said the RAM, the random access memory, then you are correct. How much RAM does a typical computer have? Depending on it, 4 to 16 gigabytes. But when you're talking about servers, that's a completely different story. So I want to tell you right now, if you create one socket, let's assume this is your amount of RAM, this triangular shape, and then I'm going to set a dot. So you can probably see there is a small red dot right there. What happens when you put 1 dot? Nothing happens. 2 dots, 3 dots, 4 dots, nothing happens. So what happens if you put so many dots that the whole of this triangular shape, which is our RAM, by the way, is being filled up? Now, this is going to take quite a while for me to press the button, but eventually something will happen like that. And when that happens, it becomes red, right? And when the RAM is fully spent creating different kind of network connections, what that means to a server is basically game over. The server cannot run without active RAM, so it's going to be slow. I cannot say that it will crash, but what are we talking about here? This is essentially a DoS attack. We are DoSing the server by opening network connections. This is what this tool can do, the hping3 tool. It can open network connections, just like you see here. This is SYN flag. So the SYN flag, the very first flag we're going to talk about, I guess the only one is also, in order to keep the video short, is basically just a connection request initiation. So you're going to send these, and you're going to spoof, basically meaning creating a new IP address for every new connection request you send. So the server will create a lot of different kind of connections, and by default, one socket will be kept alive 75 seconds. I cannot say this is for sure for every server. This is what documentation says at some point. So that's what you should stick to. Maybe 50 seconds is better, just to keep it, like I said, a medium, a standpoint at some point. Okay, so if you just send SYN packets, That is really just the only connection. But how can you do that? So that's going to be the question. Well, you can use a tool here, or you can code it yourself. You want to code that yourself, you need to draw raw sockets. I'm not going to talk about that. Just basically saying that it is a possibility. You can do raw sockets. Now you probably think, well, if I can do something called a SYN packet connection initiation, what is that called? It's called a SYN flood attack. Okay, so that's the SYN flood attack. What about the TCP ACK? Can that do something? What the rest? Can that do something? You know, and you will start thinking about the different kind of flags that can be set in the TCP packet. And you will ask yourself, can that be used for something? And the answer is probably yes. And you should find out. You know, you should basically, in order to work your mindset, you need a good start. This video could be a start for you, but after that you need to do some research, you need to find your answers, you need to learn how to find answers, because you cannot keep getting the knowledge just from people on YouTube or from a course online. You need to find your knowledge yourself in order to research and become really good. This is my really only advice to you right now. So moving on, we need to focus on another attack type, and that is called the cross-site scripting attack. So let's go ahead and remove all that and say that you have a web page. Now it doesn't really matter what's inside the web page. This is the browser, by the way. And the browser itself do have this, you know, and then you have like the whatever, like that. Okay, so you're on that web page. Another web page, there's a triangular form of something with a picture right there. That's a picture, right? And then you have some input fields, like some, you know, and a button. And then you can write stuff here like 1, 2, 3, and A, B, C, right? If you have something like that, you have got something called input. Now, cross-site XSS scripting is basically the term you use when you can do injection of some sort from the front end. So you do something like you put something specific inside the input here. You press the button OK, you send it to the server. So the general idea is that the web page you see is the client, so that's the client, and the server over here, which is the box, is then connecting with each other. Now when you press the button OK, so that's the OK button, you will send traffic to the server, and the server will then respond back to you, to the client, with some sort of response. Depending on how the server is programmed, developed, you know, which framework and all the kind of things, language-wise doesn't really matter that much. You know, there are some languages that are safer against cross-site scripting than others, but there is no language is just the best. You know, we also require you to have these kind of safeguard measurements, you know, controls initiated or enabled in the language in order for them to work. So what kind of input am I talking about? So if you could send something specific to the server right here, so you send something right here, then we need to talk about what is it we need to send, right? That's gonna be the question right now. Whatever the server will return, we can do nothing about it. We have no control of what the server does. So we can just right now say, no, we can do nothing of the server. The server's not there for us. I'm just gonna remove that cross because it's make it look not less beautiful, right? So what we need to put inside of the payload for the client, sending that to the server, will be, in most occasions, JavaScript. A way for you to test if there is a cross-site scripting going on is by simply just crafting a small script like that and do an alert statement like this, and like XSS for example, and then close the script tag just like that. Boom. And that's going to be inputted inside the field here. So you're going to copy paste this here and put it inside the fields. You can do both, for example, doesn't really matter. And then press the button. if the server reply back in some way, making this pop-up. So a pop-up will appear. Alert is basically a pop-up, and the pop-up will look something like this. If we send it on the screen, we'll have an OK button, and there will be written the text XSS on it. And on a Windows machine, you have these controls in the top with the X and stuff like that. And that's going to be positioned around this particular location, around here. That's going to pop up, right? If it does that, then the server is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. Now, that was one example of cross-site scripting, right? Using this formula. Most occasions, it is not a formula that's going to do cross-site scripting, depending on how it works, because it can work. That's the thing, how the server is programmed. That's why, as you, as an offensive penetration tester, need to test which kind of approach is going to work for you. Sometimes on web pages, there's also going to be a search bar, where you can write something like search bar, and that's also going to have a button of some sort right there. For example, like is for search. When you press that button, you know, it will search the web page and returns the page for you that you search for, right? But sometimes it also say something like your search result, whatever you wrote right there, was not found. And if it does something like that, that is also a cause for you to test properly again, to take this input right here and put it inside the form field and press the button. So cross-site scripting is basically just you putting a script inside some sort of input way. There are different kind of inputs, also going to be URL inputs. Not going to waste too much of time talking about every single scenario. I want you to research these kind of things, because what I usually tell my students is, well, I can tell you one thing, but you need to research the matter yourself and look into it. If you don't do that, you will never learn to learn. And that is the most valuable thing in education can give a student, to learn. But let me just say it this way. To give a student, it's not the right way of saying it. The right way of saying is that the student needs to understand how to learn. And if the student cannot understand that, that's a problem. The teacher cannot teach the student to learn, but the teacher can try and push the student towards learning. And that is what I really think you should embrace in this particular example. Now, we're going to go ahead and do another one called cross-site scripting. SQL Injection. It's going to be somewhat the same as this. So what I'm going to do is, one more time, create this beautiful website. And inside this website, we're going to create a small design. In this particular case, we have an image in the top, just to make it a little different than since last time. And then we have a login formula. I know it's very beautiful, drawn by mine. So we're going to have a user and a password right there. And you can also have a picture here. Why not, right? When you press the button login, you're going to send the traffic to the server. The server will validate your username and your password, and if that is correct, going to send you some sort of login cookie or session some way, or JVT token, different kind of ways for the server for you to prove that you're already logged in. That's not for me to explain right now. If you're a developer, you probably know what I'm talking about. If not, you probably need to pause the video and go ahead and search for session cookies, login session cookies for websites and stuff like that, right? So what really happens is when you press the button with the correct user and password, you will try and log in. What we need to understand here in SQL Injection is that you have something like select, probably like ID or maybe just the username from users where username equals to whatever we sent and the password is equal to whatever we sent, and that's something in the area of that. These two here is probably going to be replaced by variables, so the user will be put there, you guess it now, and and the password will be put, let me just do it the correct way, be that variable, yes, and the path will be that variable. That is some code handling that. For now, we just look at this somewhat correct but still pseudocode-ish SQL statement. Now, what happens if you put something different in than the user? Let's assume for now that the user we put in, let me just write Bob and the password is Bobber123. Bad password, but assume for that for now. So we're gonna put that in there. It's gonna be different color for this particular example. So we're gonna see that has been put there, and the password is gonna be put there, right? Let me just do a beautiful arrow. So what really happens is the instead of the username, it's gonna be select username from users where username equal to Bob and password equal to Bob123. Now that's okay, but what if something different is put inside of these two fields? I did it correctly. What if I do it incorrectly? Like, let's assume that I put something in like instead of Bob, I put or1 equal 1, for example, and then a tick. What if I put that inside of it? Now you probably say, what would that do? Well, instead of Bob, I put that, and that is SQL code. So this SQL statement will now translate to something like, let me just, this. Instead of, user, it will say where username equal to, and then there is this small, which is not there, but let me just put them there, one there, and there, there, and there. Then what you're really gonna do here is replace one of them. Let me see if we can make this a bit easier to look at. So we're gonna take this here and say, so I'm gonna try and do some hefty, pasty paint skills here. So I hope you understand that. So that's gonna be put, whoops, still not correctly. Let me just do it one more time. Up, there we go. My paint skill is not as good as they used to be. So that's going to be put there. Now, mind the syntax right now. It's not 100% correct, but what you're going to see here is saying select username from users where username equal to nothing or 1 equal 1. So let's talk about this statement here. What does that mean? Because that is the key to SQL injection. Well, this basically means that, well, we're going to select the username from the table users where that username is either blank, or we say if 1 equal 1. And these ones are literal values that I put in. That's not something we create from, something we fetch from somewhere. It's something I put in. So basically saying select username from users where username just exists. That's really what this means, this right here. And that actually translate to that we're gonna select every single username in the database, because we have select username. So we have a database just like that, and we have different kind of fields just like that, then username, password, blah blah. Then every single username, all rows of data will be selected now. And that is because the way SQL works, that it basically looks for the actual condition here. That is what SQL injection is all about. You put something different in, instead of the username Bob, you put something SQL code in and you test that. So you put it in, boom, you send it to the server, it's gonna be put there, and it's gonna try and select it, and you get some results pretty fast. If the server is susceptible for SQL injection, you're gonna find out. You can even try and put in a special character like small tick or a double tick, which is called quotation marks. Different kind of things to do that, But I wouldn't recommend you go ahead and do that on a website. But there are different kind of unsafe APIs you can use in programming where you're not gonna safeguard. That it's not safeguarded against SQL injection, which it basically should be, but 2023, no one talks about it. It's like Fight Club. I don't know why. It's really, really weird. That is SQL injection. Now, in order to keep this video short, I'm gonna go back now and say that there are different kind of tools you can use. That's the theory, at least, behind it. So for the cross scripting one, I highly recommend you do that manually. For the SQL injection part, there is a tool that is really good. And is called SQL Map. SQL Map is basically a tool that can do automated SQL injection attacks on any single input there is on a web page. There are different ways for you to use it. I suggest you go ahead and look it up. And this is not a video about SQL Map. It is not. But I highly suggest you go ahead and do that. Now, these kind of three things we talk about now. We talked about DoS attack or DDoS, not potato, but almost the same. We have cross-site scripting and we have SQL injection. These three different attacks are very common to see on web pages. There are other things like IDOR attack, indirect object reference, which is basically also known as broken access control, which is commonly tested for when you have a web page. Let's assume the same web page one more time. Where's page? And you already logged in. And let me just talk about that pretty quick. So you already logged in, and we're going to talk about the IDOR one. So that's in indirect object reference with the three dots in between. It's 4 different words. So we have this web page right here, and let's just assume it is signed. Doesn't really matter. It's an image, and we have some text, and we have an image more, and that's really fine. But up in the end here at the URL bar, that's a very straight line. You probably have something like this, right? Let me just do something for you so we have something real. So example.com, and maybe it's gonna say user ID equal 1. Or just do something like 54. Now, assuming that you're logged in, and when you log in as a user, you see your 2 images and some information about you. That could be some personal information about you, your email, whatever kind of thing there is on a user profile page. What happens if you say, but if I'm user 54, what happens if I put in 55 and press enter? So that's basically translate you to do 55 instead of 54. So you take this right here and say, well, I know I'm user 55. I am authenticated and logged in, but I'm gonna try 55 and press enter. So you're gonna do that now and see what happens. Now, if the things here change, so now it's gonna show user 55, then you got IDOR, indirect object reference. So you are accessing someone's material, website, personal information. That is really bad. And that is also called broken access control, because you are accessing something you shouldn't be able to access, which is then broken. Hence the name broken access control. So these are also really offensive things. So that's 4 things we covered now you can do. Now, brute forcing itself is a different thing, you know, and I think let's just cover that also. So let me just do another web page. So paint, here we go. Another web page. It's gonna be a rounded corner one. So beautiful. So we have a web page design, another one, and we have a image right there. And now we can log in one more time. And I know it's beautiful, but let's just save some time. So user and password, that's beautiful. And what you're gonna do now is say, but brute force. So brute force attack is basically, instead of you just doing the manual, you press the button, type in username and type in password, press the button, okay. That's one logging attempt. If you do twice, you have 2 login attempts, you have 3rd time, you have 3 login attempts, and so on. But what if you automate that in certain ways, so you have 100 login attempts in 1 second, right? That is called brute force. And that is easily achieved by using a tool called Hydra, for example. I'll go back. So Hydra is a brute force tool created by these guys, and it's basically used to brute force your way through to get access to something. Hydra can brute force other than web pages. It can also brute force access to FTP connections or SSH connections, different kind of things. Brute forcing is all about guessing the right password or the right username. In order to be successful with the brute force attack, it is best for you to know some part of what you're trying to do. The part you can easiest know is the username. So, assume that you have a username called Bob. That is what you know. Then you're going to pair Bob with a different kind of list of passwords, an enormous list. So really what brute forcing is just taking a Bob and one password, Bob another password, Bob another password, Bob and another password. And those kind of passwords can be found. For example, there is on user share word list, for example, on Linux Kali, there are different kind of word lists. The most, I guess, I wouldn't say important, but known one is called rockU.txt. It is rather large. It's a, whoa, that's pretty big. Let me see, you can get this a bit smaller. Clear. Okay, anyways. It is 140 megabytes large. That's a kind of large password list. Now, what you could do is go ahead and try SecList, for example. Have that downloaded, and you can say I want passwords, and inside of that you can have the most popular password phrases, or you can have, for example, the they call the probable top 207. So you can go in and say nano. It's just some editor and say probably 200. What does it say? Probably v2 top 207, and then you're gonna find a lot of passwords, and each individual of these passwords will be paired like Bob and sent as a brute force mechanism through Hydra, and it's gonna be put directly inside the login form, and then they're gonna try and log in. Now that's really gonna bring us back to saying that we covered 5 different kind of offensive attacking techniques. And I think that is, for now, what I think you should go ahead and research, because this is your time to learn and start learning about how to find the correct answers. I gave you all the conclusions, I gave you some hints, I explained you the theory, but the actual commands and doing it, getting it under the nails is something you need to do. And no, it is not enough to do it 1 time or 2 times or 3 times. You need to do it more than that. And then, try and be repetitive about it and do some actual offensive hacking testing somewhere. You can either use Hack the Box, that's a really good place to do it. Or you can do Try Hack Me, which is also really good. Or there's a web page, something with vulnerable machines. You can download them and then intentionally vulnerable machines. And then by that you can run them on virtual machines, and then as a virtual machine, and then you can try and hack that machine. So I think that's what I want to say in this video, and I know I didn't give you exact knowledge right now, but I gave you ideas, theories, and how it works. So I really hope you learned something, and you're gonna go ahead and research. See you again online in the next video, and have a really nice day.